Well, joining us in studio now to take a closer look at Gabon's and investment destination is Abel Myburgh. He's head of the Africa desk at BDO. Sven Richter, head of frontier markets at Renaissance Capital. And joining us from our bureau in Gabon's capital of Libreville is Sanjay Day. He's country director of Abidjit. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. And Abel, let's kick off things with you. I mean, that a brief overview of what we're looking at with regards to Gabon, and getting some attention is President Bongo's efforts in increasing transparency, making Gabon a more attractive investment destination. In a broad sense, what for you is the investment case that Gabon puts on the table?
Looking at several scenarios that's currently applicable to Africa is almost in the same instance applicable to Gabon as well, where there needs to be a diversification of the economy, not to be too dependent on the oil industry itself. Therefore, a big drive towards employment, trying to get that up to the same path as the introduction also showed. You know, there's quite a large percentage of the population unemployed, which is almost the same as the same of Africa itself, and obviously try to exploit some of the other industries. Mm-hmm. And therefore, in terms of Gabon, you know, the transparency is great, you know, because that's what we need, the positive news about countries in Africa, and then they're going towards the right direction. Obviously also the big involvement of the president himself in terms of new projects, contracts signed for the country.
Yeah, we'll be taking a closer look at the diversification we're seeing in the economy a little later on in the show. For now, Sanjay, just taking a look at what's been outlined, its ambitions and goals that have been set. How would you rate the fundamentals of government and governance from your on-the-ground experience on that end?
Thank you for inviting on the show. And I've been driving this initiative for the last 1.5 years in Gabon, and the experience has been pretty exciting over here, especially with the fact that the transparency of the government and the government functionaries has been excellent. The proactive approach that has been taken by everybody concerned, with the development program of Emergent Gabon, they have been very proactive in assisting the group in terms of providing the required knowledge base and the information that is initially required by a new investor into the country. So I would rate Gabon very highly as far as providing information to investor is concerned.
Sven, I asked the question because, yes, we've got multinationals queuing up to do business in Gabon, but questions have been raised about the validity of President Bongo's rule, and that puts political risk in the forefront yet again. I mean, it can't be ignored, even if economic activity or economic growth predicted to be 4.4% in 2012, 3.3% in 2013, which is enviable on a relative basis, but political risk is often a big deterrent.
Well, political risk is a deterrent. The thing is that Gabon sits in a very interesting position right now. They have this money from oil, but that's going to be ending fairly shortly. So they have to do something to replace it. Mm-hmm. And it looks like the president has really put a lot of initiatives and really is pushing these initiatives to do something about it. Now, I think for me, the biggest sort of thing about that was when one shopkeeper was interviewed in Gabon and he said, well, we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, we don't know yet whether the president is going to do a good job or a bad job. And I think that's where Gabon finds itself at the moment. And in terms of political risk, I think that investors, we're sitting in a similar position. On the one hand, you have a president who looks like he's doing a good job. He's really pushing, but he has a danger in that if the oil revenue dries up without him replacing it, there's going to be pressures on him and you're going to find the opposition around. On the other hand, if he's able to achieve what he does, I think people will be happy with him and he will gain credibility by doing his job well. Yes, there is sort of, I suppose, almost the positive side is they move to a benevolent dictatorship there, which is sort of a bit like what Singapore had for many, many years. And that's what they're trying to follow, the model that they're trying to follow there. So there are challenges, but there's also lots of opportunities. And as investors, we have to make an assessment as to what we see and what we can do for that.
For what we're seeing now, Sanjay, it really speaks to the ease of doing business in the country. I mean, we know that back in 2006, we had government reduce the size of cabinet in a centralization of power. And, you know, while that's a move that's been criticized, it's being said that it's done to streamline operations, create efficiencies, and modernize the Gabonese state to lessen the red tape, the bureaucracy in the country. What's your experience as a businessman of that territory, of the red tape that you do have to deal with?
Absolutely, Alicia. I would love to comment upon that, having been on the ground for quite some time now. And what I can, comment upon with all my heart is that red tapeism is at the bare minimum. I mean, I haven't come across any situation in Gabon when we are completely lost in terms of information, where I have not come across any situation where there has been any over interference of the bureaucracy in any manner, and things has been absolutely very, very simple and smooth for any foreign investor. And therefore red tapeism is one thing, basically with our group and me, myself coming from India and seeing the situations over there and the complexity of doing business, I feel Gabon is an excellent place in terms of there is no prevalence of any sort of red tapeism over here. Absolutely.
Added to that, Abel, we've got quite a bit of incentive being put on the table as well. I mean, those involved in the timber industry, for example, investing in special economic zones. And I've got to read this because it's actually phenomenal. Enjoy a 10-year tax exemption from corporate tax, another 5 years at a 10% tax rate, no customs duty for 25% of imported materials, and the export of manufactured goods. They're exempt from VAT for 25 years as well, will receive a 50% discount on their electricity costs. I mean, looking at this, who won't want to do business in Gabon?
Exactly. That's always interesting for me, when you look at countries as well, is to look at the incentives part of business that the government's offering. That always gives you a clear indication what industries are pushed by government and what are the flavors of the day. Wood industry, obviously, the big demand for timber, especially in China, in terms of the railways and the building of bridges and support of the organs through Africa as well. And then they said some of the other incentives that I looked at, that was quite interesting, is the incentive on cement, because that's the part of infrastructure development that's very needy in Africa. It's the supply of cement, and you also look at the similar types of incentives. I mean, to offer a exemption on corporate tax sitting at 35%. That's a good margin you can add to your profits, so definitely.
A very good margin, and as I say, a strong incentive being put on the table. I mean, Sven, for now, private capital is certainly responding, but is it sustainable? I mean, because often when the time comes for change, so whether it be 10 years or 25 years down the line, that's when all the furore seems to set in.
It does happen, but look, has that worked? I read somewhere that the foreign direct investment that they have seen into that timber sector is equal to the foreign direct investment, or more than the foreign direct investment, that the country saw in the whole past 40 years. So they are doing something, and I think that they realize that it's for time, and they need to very quickly get other industries up and running. I mean, historically, before oil, it was all manganese and timber, as we were seeing on the insert. So now it's got to do with getting the timber back up, doing the manganese. There are a couple of iron ore projects as well. And of course, there's 10% of the country is a nature reserve. They're part of the Congo Basin. So they're busy building hotels all the time. I was reading they were flying Robert De Niro all over the country to get him to be interested in building hotels. And he's saying, great place, we should build some hotels here.
Yeah, well, it's all about leveraging off the opportunity as quickly as you can, getting a maximum or bang for your buck, so to speak. Sanjay, how do you structure your business model and plan for that day, 10 years, 25 years down the line? Is it clear enough that, this is the now and you're going to have to deal with the then?
Basically our focus in Gabon is to set up a manganese processing plant, and to support that manganese processing plant, we are going in for gas-based power. Now, when you look at the manganese position here in Gabon, in quality of manganese that in our Indian operations we have been buying for the last 10 or 12 odd years, so we are absolutely sure about what is the quality and the grade of the manganese that is available. Number two, being in the business for such a long time, we also have a pretty good idea about what is the size of the resources that is available and whether it is sustainable for the next 25-30 years. So definitely what I see that Abhijit is going to be operating on an even keel, when you look at 25 years down the line. Now, when you look at the second issue that comes is the power. Now, number one is that this is gas-based power plant, so it is the cleanest fuel, and therefore it is quite sustainable in terms of the environmental point of view, number one. Number two, the reserves of gas, we understand, are reasonable in order to sustain these kind of projects. Number three, there are a lot of untapped hydropower potential in this area, which is now being explored, including operations for associated gas and natural gas. So therefore, 25 years down the line, I don't see any challenges that are likely to arise to Abhijit in terms of supply of these basic raw materials. Now, if you look at the business model, 100% of our products at this point in time, and probably going ahead also, would be exported. And there always remains a market internationally, because we are not focused on the domestic market because of non-availability of further user of manganese. So the international market is going to be alive, be it the Europe, be it the Americas, or be it China and other Asian countries. So therefore, 25 years down the line, we are absolutely clear that we will have the resources to run these business. Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, let's leave the conversation there for now. We're heading into a quick commercial break. More on Invest Africa when we return. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Invest Africa. Gabon has been Central Africa's most prosperous and stable country for much of its independent history, but this is changing due to dwindling oil reserves. The country must find new ways of not only encouraging investment in exploration, but in developing other economic sectors as well. Let's take a look. The Jet joins our conversation as well. Gentlemen, we were chatting during the break and just taking a look at, with all this opportunity that seems so abundant in a country like Gabon, why, we've got participation from sub-Saharan Africa investors lagging that of the kind of investment we're seeing come through from China, from India. What's possibly acting as a deterrent here?
Well, I think traditionally Gabon has been very much in the French-speaking influence, and they've had lots of relationship with France and the other French-speaking sub-Saharan countries, and not so much with sort of English-speaking countries. When I say English-speaking, even people from Germany tend to do business in English. So, maybe that's where people from English-speaking business countries have not yet really seen the opportunity and got excited about it, but India and China are leading the way.
Sanjay, let's take a look at some of the challenges that you may experience on that end, because some say it's the fact that investment is most suitable within the mining sector, and that alone. There are constraints on extractive industries that are not so easy to overcome, that being a small domestic market, limited and deteriorating infrastructure, high production costs, a rigid labor market. What are some of the challenges you experience in terms of doing business on that end?
Well, of course, if I have to talk about challenges of doing business in Gabon, belonging to generally an English-speaking territory, the first challenge that we face is, of course, language. And language is can be a big deterrent factor when you are down here on the ground, because, you have to learn it, because that's the most commonly spoken language, and that's one of the challenges. The second thing is that the infrastructure relating to information technology. Now, this is a big area where something reasonably good has to be done in terms of doing business in Gabon. The internet infrastructure, the availability of public information over the internet, and the ease of communication. This is one of those big challenges. As you know, that today's business is dependent on fast communication, and we have been used to that for quite some time. Now, this is one of the big challenges that we face. The third possible thing that I have faced over here is that Gabon, the people, largely, they're trying to adjust themselves to the new culture. We come in from a different territory with a different kind of a work culture, and we have to mend our ways in accordance to get adjusted with the local population, and at the same time there has to be some initiative of the local population also to ramp up their capacities and their skills to bring it up to that level. Now, this definitely is one of the things which I have faced over a period of time, and I think I have seen, having stayed over here for almost 1.5 years, I have seen large, big steps and very developments which I have seen in the attitude of the people. These are some of the challenges, and then because largely of the infrastructure relating to the information technology, the operation of the banking operation is quite complicated. and it can be quite slow at times, and therefore this is one of those important areas where really the banking sector has to come up in order to bring it up to the world-class level. These are a few of the challenges that we face in Gabon.
Absolutely, but Abel, that bringing us then to the discussion on diversification of an opportunity where you've got these gaps that present themselves, whether it be within the financial services sector or the ICT space. Surely this then opens up opportunity for investors in those sectors specifically.
No, definitely. I mean, it's quite clear from some of the activities that we have facilitated into Gabon as well, from India in terms of telecommunications, IT, with the optic cable that's available, in terms of speeding up the internet facilities. And obviously, one of the other areas as well is looking at your middle class Africans, because that's a development in Africa that's quite almost running under the radar at the moment. But what goes with that is all your demand for commodities, increasing of cities in the size which Gabon will definitely also be part of. And it all links in with going back to employment. Interesting, we talked earlier about the incentives. One of the incentives that's given now is a 20% deduction on your cost of labor if you bring in new employees into Gabon as a company. So there's a clear indication that the government is really pushing the unemployment problems that they've got at the moment. In
fact, a lot of the steps that government is taking, Sven, is being labelled as a statement of intent. I mean, we spoke, in that insert about beneficiation within various industries, and seems to be happening in the forestry space quite aggressively. President Bongo having banned all unprocessed log exports in January 2010. 60% were at that stage being exported, without processing, and many saying that a statement of intent in itself.
Yes, I think it is. It's a phenomenal statement of intent. There are issues they still need to deal with. I mean, the 3G system is pretty much non-existent. So until you have that, you can't really have banking going to everyone there, because obviously 1.5 million people, they spread out quite a lot, where the branch is going to be. But going back a little bit more to the login issue, yes, that is all a statement of intent, and it's sometimes when someone is in very much control of a country, in terms of a politician who's very much in control, they can make very quick decisions like that, which, when they're the right decisions, can work out very well. So on the one hand, you have a bit of a political risk. On the one hand, you have a political opportunity, because those things happen.
And possibly a hidden gem in the ICT space is that Gabon is two countries in the Central African region which possesses a connection to the WASC SAT3 through a sea cable link to Europe, to Asia, by skirting Africa, and that makes communication 10 times cheaper than using satellite.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you now, and you have your statement of intent, you put education in place, you can move all sorts of outsourcing to Gabon, which at the moment they can't do because they need more education, but the opportunity is there. And the goals are there because, by 2035 they want to be an emerging market. They don't really have a choice but to get to those goals, because oil is going to run out, and they have all these opportunities facing them. I mean, even for the manganese, they're very well positioned to export to Europe, because they're quite close to Europe. So there's a lot of opportunities that I think is facing them, but there has to be that follow-through from the statement to the actuality.
That's exactly it. I mean, Abel, we've had Sven highlight there and reiterate what was said in the insert, where the country has the target of reaching a developing nation status by 2025. Are those targets that have been set? Because, often you have these targets that have been set, and they're unattainable, and sometimes that can act as, a demotivating factor.
Yes, definitely. I mean, what we've seen as well in the past of some of the other African countries has been the downfall of certain countries in terms of fulfilling that role, or the promises that were made. But from my point of view, what I feel is that there's a responsibility on both sides. Responsibility on the part of the government and on your investors and current businessmen in Gabon itself. So we're always quick to blame, but we need to look at ourselves as well sometimes. What is the intent of the company there? Are they there to sustain, or just to have a quick profit and then move out of the country again to a neighboring country, for instance?
Yeah. Well, Sanjay, we've touched on a few key sectors here. I mean, obviously, the mining sector stands, at the forefront, and talk about a diversification into forestry, into banking, into ICT as well. What about tourism? And I've got to ask you the question, because you've got the eyes of a foreigner in the country. I mean, what kind of tourism potential are we looking at on that end?
Well, I've traveled across the country, used the highways, and I think this is a beautiful place, and tourism definitely can play a very large role in terms of the economic development. Now, we have to understand one thing, that this is a country of a population of 1.5 million. And therefore, there is always a question on the type of industry that should be developed in this country. If we are looking at FMCG industries coming up in this territory, I don't think it would be a very sensible idea unless you consider the complete West African CMEC region as a single market. So therefore, I think the tourism sector, in the service sector, there is a huge potential to develop, integrate those far-off places. And as you know, that this is one of the largest piece of existing rainforest in the world. So therefore, absolutely, without a doubt, I can say that tourism has got a huge potential and can be developed over a period of time.
Well, a good place to leave the conversation for today. Thanks so much, Sanjay, for joining us from Libreville, Gabon, and thanks to my guests in studio as well. Sven, Abel, a pleasure chatting to you this afternoon. That's all we have time for this edition of Invest Africa. We'll be back again at the same time next week. Until then, from me, Alicia Second, it's goodbye.